Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. Just making sure that you guys can hear me and you can see me well. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. It's always a pleasure for me to talk a little bit about TradeStation and some of its technology and some of the tools that you can use as a trader. So today we're going to concentrate on the Fibonacci tools. These are a set of drawing tools that are available on the TradeStation website and are great at identifying support and resistance. So before we go into this topic and dive in and look at all the technicalities of Fibonacci on the TradeStation platform, let's go ahead and go through some of the disclosures. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable for everyone, and that past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. Manolo is my colleague. He has shared a link right there in the chat. That is a link to the disclosures. But if you want to go to the link directly, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let me go ahead and switch over to, we're going to do a combination of both things. We're going to do the TradeStation platform just so that you can see the technology applied live. And we also have some content right here on this PowerPoint that I'm going to ask Manolo to share with everyone here. Is a PDF, but it's a PowerPoint converted into a PDF. And it has, some of the information around Fibonacci and the tools that are available in TradeStation around Fibonacci. So let's go ahead and take a look. The first thing is that let's set the tone for Fibonacci and talk a little bit about how it came about and some of the information that it's easily accessible on the web. So some of the notes that I made on this PDF are exactly taken from the web. But let's just briefly talk about who Fibonacci was and what is this Fibonacci number sequence that we talk about all the time. Fibonacci is the nickname of a mathematician who lived in the 12th century, the year around 1175. His name was Leonardo Pisano, probably because he lived in the city of Pisa, Italy. And he was the one who introduced the number sequence. Now, however, the number sequence itself has been used many centuries before the time of Fibonacci. In fact, I was reading this morning that it originates on Indian mathematicians many centuries before Fibonacci existed. However, since Fibonacci was the person who introduced the Fibonacci or the sequence to the Western world, that's why the sequence is named or is actually known by his name. But it's been used, many centuries ago by other mathematicians, and you can find writings on this number sequence many centuries before Fibonacci lived. But Fibonacci, did talk about the sequence, did utilize the number sequence, and made some connections with the golden ratio, even though not directly. A lot of these numbers that we're going to take a look at do conform to the golden ratio. The golden ratio is said to exist in nature, naturally, and many things in the world, from human anatomy, from architecture, from living things, everything conforms to this golden ratio. There's a ton of information, so we're not going to dive deeper into what the golden ratio is and the math behind it, because that's not the intention of this class. But the Fibonacci sequence numbers do conform to the golden ratio. And we're going to talk a little bit about math right now, but not to the extent of, these expert mathematicians that came up with this idea. But the number sequence starts with 0 and 1. And what it does, it adds those two numbers and the result gets added to the sequence. So the sequence starts 0, 1. We add the two numbers. So 0 plus 1 gives you 1. And then we add that result, which is a 1, to the sequence. So now we have 0, 1, 1. Now the last two numbers on that sequence are 1 and 1. So we add those two numbers, 1 plus 1, and then the result 2 gets added to the sequence. So now we have 0, 1, 1, 2. Then we take the last 2 numbers in that sequence, which are 1 and 2, add them together, and we get 3. 3 gets added to the sequence, and so on. So you get the idea on how the number sequence is created is just taking the last 2 numbers on the sequence, adding them together, and whatever result you get, then you add it to the sequence, and that goes on for infinity. It doesn't end. Right now, right here at the bottom, you can see that I added the start of the sequence, and it goes from 0 all the way to 233. So if you wanted to figure out the next number, looking at that sequence right there at the bottom, you would add 144 to 233, which is exactly 377, right? And we would add the 377 to the sequence. Then we add 377 plus the 233, and so on. But the nice thing about the number sequence is not just the sequence itself, but the relationship between those numbers. So let's talk a little bit about that. How are the Fibonacci levels calculated? The Fibonacci levels are derived from the Fibonacci number sequence. And what we do is we divide any number by its preceding number, and you get the golden ratio, or this mathematical number, which is 1.618. And it says here that many known things have dimensional properties that adhere to the ratio. There are many examples on the web that adhere to this measurement. For example, the way that the seashells exist, or some of the architectural buildings like in Athens conform to this golden ratio. Also, the human anatomy, to a certain extent conforms to this natural existence of the golden ratio. And what is happening today is we are applying the same golden ratio to the financial markets. A lot of times we see a multitude of traders looking at Fibonacci levels, expecting something to happen around the area of the Fibonacci levels, and the market does indeed react to those areas. Maybe because of that fact, because there's a multitude of people, expecting for something to happen. People or traders have submitted orders around those levels because they follow it. So a lot of times, traders call it a self-fulfilling prophecy because of that, because everyone is expecting something to happen. Everyone, it's sending orders around those levels. So the market is indeed expected to react to those levels. A lot of traders feel like the Fibonacci tools and the way that, people are expecting the market to fit some of those levels is some sort of voodoo science. But to a certain extent, you draw some of these tools on a chart, and it's sometimes impressive how the market follows some of these levels, and sometimes it is scary to a certain extent, how good these support and resistance levels are expected. Maybe it's got to do a lot with the fact that there's a lot of traders, submitting those orders at those levels, but it is interesting analysis techniques, and that's a whole reason why we have them on TradeStation, because they become very interesting ways of analyzing the markets. Okay. The other Fibonacci levels, by the way, I wanted to give you an example of a number. So if we go back here, let's go back here to this other slide. Okay, so we have the number sequence right there at the bottom. And I'm going to pull up my calculator. So just to give you an example. So the last 2 numbers we have here on this slide are 144 and 233. If you were to add, the 233 and divide it by the 144, you get the 1.618. Pretty cool, huh? Let's do one more. So let's suppose that we look at the next number that we talked about, which is 377. I'm going to take the 377 and divide it by the preceding number, which is 233. 233. And I'm going to click on, or yes, let's go ahead and total that. And notice how it's 1.618, exactly the same ratio. And it's interesting how as you go on in the number sequence, the closer you get to this mathematical calculation of the golden ratio. You know, if you go into the smaller digits, it's not so exact. For example, if I take the 55 and divide it by 44, you get something close, but not as close as you get if you were to grab a number, you know, later in the sequence. But if I take the 55 and I divide it by 34, you still get something closer. You get a 1.617. So that's a characteristics of the sequence. You have to go deep into the sequence in order to get closer to the mathematical calculation of this golden ratio. But the other levels, we were talking about the other levels. And so yes, the 1.618 is the mathematical number for the golden ratio, but the other levels are derived by dividing one number by the next number in the sequence. So if I do it the other way, let me bring up my calculator one more time. If I do 377 divided by, we said 377 divided by 244. Those were not the numbers. Okay. Let's go back here to the sequence. I have short-term memory. So let's go ahead and do the calculations again. Okay, so we take 233 divided by 144. And you get 1.68. Now, if we do it backwards, if we do the 144 divided by the 233, you get 0.618, which is one of the Fibonacci levels also. So notice that not only we're doing it backward, we're also doing it forward to get a level. So 0.618 is one of the Fibonacci levels. If we skip a number, if we do the 89, notice that I'm not going to take the 144. If we do the 89 divided by the 233, let's do that. 89 divided by the 233 gives you a 0.3819, which is another Fibonacci. If you are familiar with the Fibonacci retracement lines, you know that we have one at 38%, which is exactly this number. So we have an understanding of where these levels come from. And it's just a relationship between the numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. In fact, let's go one more. Let's go one number out, and we're going to skip 1, 2, and I'm going to take the 55 and divide it by the 233. That gives you a 0.23, which is exactly another Fibonacci number. So what we're looking for is the 23, the 38, the 68. So let's go ahead and close this or minimize this calculator. And I'm going to go over here to my TradeStation platform and just draw a Fibonacci number just to correlate the percentages that we just calculated into the Fibonacci tool. So I'm going to go here to the drawing menu, and I'm going to go to the Fibonacci price retracement lines. And let's go here from this bottom to this top right here. And what I want you guys to notice, let me make these labels a little bit bigger so that you can see them better on the screen. I'm going to make the labels bold and 11, set it as default. Okay, so now we see the percentages here, and what a coincidence. We see the 23, we see the 38, we see the 61.8. So that's exactly where the levels are derived from. So there's a natural happening around those levels that the financial markets sometimes adhere to. And those are the things that we're gonna try to talk through today and try to understand, okay? Let's go ahead and see. Let me go ahead and take a look at the chat here to see if there's anything coming through. Perfect, all right. Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what is available on TradeStation in terms of Fibonacci tools. So we know how the levels are calculated and how the percentages come about. These are the tools that are available on the TradeStation platform. We have the Fibonacci price retracement lines, the extension lines, the retracement calculator, the time extension lines, the speed resistance arcs, speed resistance fans, and the Fibonacci cycles. Let's take a look at each one of them, how they're built, and to a little bit of how they should be interpreted. You know, as I said before, this is an area that is open to interpretation and is open to familiarity to the Fibonacci tool. So the more you use them, the more you're able to identify certain levels that are important on any security, but you do have to practice on them. There's no right or wrong. And this is true for any technical analysis in TradeStation, you know. Yes, you get signals, you get crossovers, but then again, it's open to the trader's interpretation as to whether this is a signal that I want to trade or not. So let's go ahead and take a look at the retracement lines first. Retracement lines, they use horizontal lines to indicate areas of support and resistance. The levels are calculated using the high and low points of the chart. These high and low points are areas that you have to identify. So you have to go from a top to a bottom, or from a bottom to a top, draw those Fibonacci's and see how you can measure the retracements. There are 7 horizontal lines aligned with Fibonacci ratio. So you have the 0%, which is where you initiate or where you end the distance. Then you have the 23%, 38, 50, 61, 76, and 100. 50 and 100, you know, 50 itself is not really a Fibonacci number, but it's just halfway through the measurement from 0 to 100. 0 and 100 is determined by what you click on the chart. So the first click is going to be your 100, and then your second click is going to be your 0. We're going to take a look at that on the TradeStation chart so that it makes more sense. After significant price movement, support and resistance levels are often at or near these levels. And sometimes it is surprising how close they are. Let's go to the TradeStation platform. Take a look at the current price activity right here for Apple. Apple is in an uptrend right now. So let's go ahead and open this chart a little bit more. Let's suppose that we are, you know, these corrections right here are just a few days, and they're not that big to measure them and project them into the future. But it's okay. Let's go ahead and find something that it's a little bit older. Let's suppose that we are measuring this uptrend right here. You see this happened back in January. And we're going to go from this low right here and on January 3rd all the way to this high on February 3rd. It's about a month of trading activity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the drawing menu. You can click the Fibonacci tools right out of this drop down. They're all there, I mean, they're grouped together, and they're, you know, listed in alphabetical order. That's why you have cycles at the very top. Maybe not your first option when it comes to Fibonacci. I would think that somebody would go to the Fibonacci cycles once you have a better understanding of what Fibonacci is and the more standard way of looking at Fibonacci's, which is the retracement lines. So the retracement lines are right here. It's the second one on the list. And again, this is just listed in alphabetical order. If you see yourself drawing many Fibonacci tools on your TradeStation charts, enable the drawing toolbar. There's an option right here at the menu, at the bottom of the menu, that says toggle drawing toolbar. When you click there, it puts the drawing toolbar right here on the left as a vertical toolbar. And all the Fibonacci tools are going to be right here in the middle. They have an icon, which you have to pretty much get familiar with the icon to know which one's which. But here, right here in the middle, we have the Fibonacci price retracement line. So whichever way you want to do it, I'm just showing you a couple of ways in which you can access the drawing tool, and then we're just going to draw it here on the screen. I'm going to squeeze the chart a little bit so that I can have a little bit more space right here in the middle, because I'm just going to concentrate over here. And I'm going to click on the Fibonacci retracement lines. I have snap mode turned on, by the way, which will help me attach that Fibonacci tool to the extreme high and low that I'm clicking on. So let me click here closer to this low and then on this high. Take a look at the 100 is where the Fibonacci is initiated and the 0 is where it ends. If I were to draw this the other way around, let's say that this one in particular I drew from a bottom to a top. Let's say that I'm measuring a downtrend instead. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and delete this one. I'm just going to click on one of the lines and press delete on the keyboard. Let's suppose that we want to measure from this high to this low. What we do, we click on Fibonacci one more time. I'm going to go from this high all the way to this low. So notice how the values are inverted, because now my initiating click is 100 and then my second click is 0, because that's the starting point of your retracement. You know, you always go from a bottom. In this case, we went from a top to a bottom, but the bottom is the initiating measurement for that Fibonacci, so that's 0, and it's just going to measure percentages based on that Fibonacci. So let's go back to what we did earlier. I'm going to click on that line again, remove, click on Fibonacci one more time, click from this low to this high, and here we go. Now, the way that the price bars interact with the Fibonacci levels may be interesting, and sometimes they're not. So for example, from this measurement that we took, we did get a few bars that actually neared the 23% Fibonacci level. I'm not sure if you see what I'm seeing, but I see some sort of support right here. You know, a few days passed and this green candle touched that Fibonacci level and it bounced from it. A few days later, you know, it crossed that level, but then again, we found some support right here at 38. Is that a coincidence? Maybe it's a coincidence, you know, that Apple just kind of just bounced off from there. But I do see bounces at the 23 level, and I see a bounce right here at the 38 level of the Fibonacci. So should you use the Fibonacci tools exclusively and decide your trading activity off of those levels? That's up to you, but it's not what, you know, technical analysis usually recommends. You have to look at the big picture and maybe bring in different technical ideas so that you can get confirmation of a particular signal. But the bounce right here from that 38.2, where that Fibonacci level was really significant right here on Apple. All right, so this is the way that you draw the Fibonacci retracement. A couple of things that you can do to the retracements that I did a little bit of adjustment on the size of the percentages so that you would be able to see them. If you double click on any of the lines, you can change the labels. That's what I did. I changed, you know, the style of the font and the size, and I set that as the default so that every time that I use the Fibonacci retracement lines, it would have that size. But over here in the settings tab, settings is pretty cool because not only are you seeing, you know, the Fibonacci numbers that come with the technical drawing tool, but you can also add additional lines. So for example, if you wanted to add, I have the 0 and the 100, I'm going to click on this check mark and say, I want to see the 123.6. And I want to see, I'm just adding, you know, additional levels to the top 138.2. And maybe I also want to see the 61.8%. Okay, now those are additional lines that I'm adding to the Fibonacci sequence. If I click OK, they get added right here at the bottom, you know? And I'm just using the same percentages that are within the measurement. I'm just extending them out outside of the Fibonacci so that I can get those percentages as well. Pretty cool, huh? So feel free to add more lines if you want to remain with the initial measurement and still track other values. In this case, I don't think I can add any negative lines, not that I can think of. So lower than 0, I cannot add a negative here. Let's see. Oh, I sure can. So I can have negative percentages if I needed to. That's interesting. Okay, so let me go ahead and go here and remove those extra lines that I added. I just did that so that you can see that it's fully customizable in terms of color, thickness, transparency. So do all you want to do to make the Fibonacci, look the way that you like. All right. Let's see. Perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next drawing tool. The next one is the Fibonacci price extension lines, which look very similar to the Fibonacci price retracement lines with a slight difference. So that's what it says here. Very similar to the Fibonacci price retracement lines in the number of levels, but it requires a third anchor point to draw. The extension lines are trend-based, and they are calculated from a retracement point. So you find a retracement, and then you measure that retracement, and then you can measure that going forward. Oh, I'll give you an example so you can see it. Used to monitor support and resistance levels, as well as a breakout price activity from a specified retracement level. So we see a little bit of a picture here. So you do an initial measurement, and then you decide where the retracement is going to live. So let me give you an example right here using the same chart we were using earlier. Let me reset the scale. Okay. Let's suppose that we're looking at this retracement. Maybe we're looking for Apple to repeat that retracement going forward. In fact, let me go up here to something closer. I was looking at the retracements here on Apple, and they're not as significant. I mean, it seems like Apple, it's on a mission to go up all the time. But let's suppose that we want to measure this retracement right here. Very small retracement, but it's okay. What we do, and I want to transfer this retracement distance to what's happening right now on the market. Maybe because I want to track this same correction on today's trading activity to see if it follows the same behavior. So what I do is I go here to my extension lines. Where is it? Price extension lines is the second button. Okay, I'm going to measure the retracement. So I'm going to go from this high to this low. That's just a measurement. Take a look at what's happening here to my cursor. Now I see the Fibonacci retracement based on that measurement that I took. So I clicked on point A, point B, that determines my retracement distance, and then I position it wherever I want. If I want to position it from this high, then let me go ahead and open this up so you can see what's happening here. All right, let me make the percentages a little bit bigger so we can see them better. All right. There we go. So now take a look at, maybe it's hard to see, but the distance that I clicked on, I'm not sure if you see the dotted line here, but it does tell me, or it does give me a visual of where this retracement came from. And I can see the dotted line going down here. But this measurement from 0 to 100 is exactly the measurement that is here, from 0 to 100. Now I can monitor the price activity in relationship to what happened in history. Will the price retrace down to the 61.8%? I don't know. That's something to be determined. In the past few weeks, Apple has been going up, up, and up. There hasn't been any other major retracements, and some of the corrections that we see as the price of Apple is moving up are very similar in size. So what's going to happen right now where the price, it's pushing towards the top and driving the prices higher and higher? Will there be a retracement? Now, if Apple decides to continue to go up, I can always adjust my anchor point and move it to the next high as it moves on, but always keep track of prior retracements. Look at the measurement of those retracements and bring them forward. So if the price were to go from 0 all the way to 100, it would be an exact correction as the one you measured at the very beginning. I find that very interesting as well. Notice that this extension retracement has 2 additional lines, the 138 and the 161, as I added them to the retracement line. So you have the flexibility of also modifying the technique so that it pretty much molds to your trading style. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at other tools. Let me remove this one. We have the retracement calculator. This is just like a little calculator that gives you prices. A lot of times, you're not really looking for the percentage values or the actual line to appear, but you want the prices, the specific prices, maybe because you want to set profit targets or stop losses based on those percentages. Let's go ahead and take a look. Used to examine price movements in trending markets. Retracement assumes that the price of a security will rise and fall many times before continuing in major trend. These price fluctuations are known as corrections, and price corrections often retrace prior trends by specific percentages. This is known as percent retracement. So that's pretty much what it is for you to determine, how far the price is going to go based on, the Fibonacci levels. If I go over here to my trade station, I can measure the distance from this low all the way to this high and calculate retracement values. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go here to my retracement calculator, which is the third from the top. Click on this low, click on this high, and then I'm going to click on the current price, or maybe the low of the current bar. So let me click here on the low of the current bar, and that will tell me which prices I clicked on. So for example, let me move this out of the way so you can see what happens here. The first price that I clicked on is price number 1. So that was 177.46. And you can see a little dash line right at the low of that candle. The price number 2 that I clicked on is 188.05, which is the high of yesterday, right over here. And we also see a dash right there at the top of that bar. And the third line that I clicked on was, or the third price that I clicked on was price 3 at 185.67, which is the low of today. So that gives you a calculation of retracement. And taking the low of the day, the price retraced 22%. No, that is not a big retracement, but notice that it's 22% of the distance of the 2 first anchor points. So from A to B, we have a 22% retracement from that top. And we also have a calculated value for the other retracements. So if you think that a good, let's say, stop loss would be the first Fibonacci level of 38.2% retracement, maybe at 184, this gives you the exact price of where the stop should be, based on the Fibonacci levels, of course. And this is, again, all open to interpretation. If you want to give yourself a little bit more room in the stop department, maybe you want to reach for the 61.8 level at right here at 181 and set that as your stop. So it all depends on what you want to do and which Fibonacci percentage level is the one that you are aligning with a support or a resistance, which can help you in determining profit targets and stop losses. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. Manolo will give you details on how to access the recording. And the last tool that I just explained is the Fibonacci calculator. So when I go here to the platform, it's this one right here, Fibonacci price retracement calculator. If you go through the drawing menu, it's right here, the calculator. All right. The Fibonacci price retracement calculator. Okay, this is just additional information. It has 3 distinctive price points. Price 1 is the beginning point, so sometimes a significant high or low. Price 2 is the main point, the opposite high or low point of price 1. And price 3 is the retracement point, the intermediate high or low for which you want to calculate the percentage retracement. So considers the price 1 to price 2 to be 100%, and then calculates all the different levels based on that. So pretty cool, huh? So the next tool is the price, not the price, the time extension lines. This is pretty cool because it uses vertical lines. A lot of times you're used to seeing Fibonacci just as horizontal levels, but this also shows you that it can be applied with vertical lines. And when you apply them as vertical lines, of course, they're going to be aligned with time and not necessarily with price. So the chart is divided into segments with vertical lines spaced apart in increments that conform to the Fibonacci sequence. So yes, 1, 1, 2, 3. So whatever spacing is between the numbers, that is exactly the number of candles that is going to be skipped in between those vertical lines. And as you go into the future, you'll see this Fibonacci sequence play out. It's interesting that sometimes price activity does align very nicely with these types of time extension lines. Let's go ahead and take a look at the TradeStation chart and see how we can use it. Let me go ahead and reset the scale here. Let me take a look at the chart. And we are going to do drawing and Fibonacci time extension lines. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at that. And all you need to do with the time extension lines is just set a starting point. That's all you do. Let's see. I'm going to choose this, I don't know, this significant low right here at the bottom. I'm going to click it. And then I'll have to measure this distance to this high right here. Maybe I want to do it a little bit closer to the current price activity. That's the whole point of adding, Fibonacci lines. But maybe let's do something, because the measurement, I didn't, when I first drew this, I didn't realize that you had a first anchor point and then you had a second anchor point. This is, which one did I click on? Let's start there. Drawing, Fibonacci. I may have clicked on the wrong one. I clicked on, time extension lines. Oh, this is the right one. All right, so it does take into account time, but let me give you an example. Let me get closer to the price activity. All right, let me go here to drawing Fibonacci time extension lines, and I'm going to draw from this low. That's big, to this correction that we measured earlier. Okay, so that distance from 0 to 100, that's the distance that you draw that starts off the Fibonacci extension lines. So you can see that the distance that you draw from point A to point B, that's your 0 to 100. And you can clearly see that duplicated here because the first line is 0, and then you have 100 right here. All right. So as you, let's see. Yeah, the vertical lines are aligned with the percentages. So pretty much the time that you're drawing on the screen is split up into percentages. Let me try to explain this a little bit better. The distance that you draw originally, that's what determines the distance from 0 to 100. The two lines that you see here in white are 0 to 100. And where you see this first yellow line, that's 38% of the time from that 0 to 100. Anything past that 100, of course, is going to be a higher percentage on the Fibonacci sequence. But between the 0 and the 100, we see two main Fibonacci levels, the 38.2 and the 61.8, all based on the 0 to 100 measurement that we took. So these lines are going to align precisely at those percentages. So the original measurement that you take from point A to point B has a direct relationship of where those lines are going to be aligned. And it just makes it very interesting to look at right here on the chart, because you may find reactions to the markets that align with these time events, based on the Fibonacci sequence. Can you use multiple Fibonacci tools together? For sure, yes. You can use the time extensions and also the price extensions together to see how the vertical lines align with the horizontal lines for more significant events. That would be something interesting to look at. The next two, the arcs and the fan, are kind of similar, because they are a combination of both concepts, price and time. Now, we first started, looking at price, so all the lines were kind of horizontal. Then we just looked at time, which the lines are vertical, but arcs and fans take both concepts into one and gives you a curved line, or something that not only projects into time, but also projects vertically for price. The arcs, they are used to determine direction and speed. So we have the two concepts combined there. When we looked at the Fibonacci, the regular Fibonacci retracement lines, that is just direction. It doesn't really measure time or speed, but this one does. Okay? Draw a trend line, and arcs are drawn based on distance percentages between the beginning and end of the trend line. Arcs not only detect trend corrections, but also measure the speed of a trend. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to go over here to my TradeStation platform, and I'm going to go to the drawing tool, go to Fibonacci arcs, and then draw from a high to a low. In this case, doesn't help me in the measurement unless I'm doing historical measurements to understand how the prices move and how they correlate with each other. But let's go ahead and remove that, and let's go and measure this uptrend right here from this low to this high. Drawing arcs from this low to this high. Take a look. I measured from this low to this high. Take a look at the correction. The correction stays within this arc at 100%. Well, that's where my measurement is. But notice what happened right here when it reached one of the Fibonacci levels at 138.2. The market crossed over that line, but then it stayed close to it. Is that a coincidence? Maybe. Maybe it is. But I just find that sometimes these lines do align very nicely to what's happening with the market activity. So those measurements are really nice. So this is the way that you draw arcs. You go from a low to a high, or a high to a low, depending on the direction of price movement, and then see how the price reacts to these percentages or Fibonacci percentages. The fan, very similar, where it's trying to measure not only direction, but also the speed in which the prices move. But again, everything is drawn and calculated using the Fibonacci levels. Let me give you an example. Let me go back here to my chart, drawing Fibonacci fan, and I'm going to go from this low again to this high. Again, do we see any price movement that stands out? Now, this box right here, let me make, where are the labels? Show labels. Set as default. I don't see the percentages, but it's fine. I'm looking at the 38, which is a cyan, and the 50%, which is the yellow, and the 61.8, which is the red. Okay, but you can see that, I'm not sure, if you look at the 50%, see how Apple has continued on that line and used it as a support? That's a 50% retracement. Remember that the measurement is going to go from 0 to 100. Then you find the 0 or the 50% retracement right at the yellow line. You see the 38 and the 68 percentages with the cyan and the red line. But it seems like Apple has continued to be on top of that yellow line, which is our 50% retracement. And all the retracements that you can see just bounce off of that yellow line. Will it continue to do that? Maybe. It's just interesting to look at, right? The cycles. This is the one that I thought I was drawing at the very beginning, because we have a time extension, the one that we looked at earlier, where you draw, from one low to the high, or the high to the low, and that distance is transferred over into the future. But this one, the Fibonacci cycles are just exactly how they appear based on the number sequence: 1, 2, 3, 5, and you see all the numbers going forward. So if I go over here onto my chart, oh, by the way, let's go through the content on this slide. So we're using it to look for significant changes in price in the proximity of the vertical lines. It is believed that the market frequently experiences a reversal in trend near the Fibonacci intervals, often drawn from significant highs or lows. So let's go ahead and take a look at my TradeStation chart. Let me remove the fan. Let me open up my chart, and I'm going to use this significant high. Yeah, it's very close to the current market activity, so I won't see how the historical activity reacts to the cycles. But if I go to the Fibonacci cycles and I click on this bar that made a new high, it'll add the Fibonacci lines going forward. And to a certain extent, I can see how the market reacts to any of these Fibonacci vertical lines. Now, if I want to back test and see how it has reacted in the past, let's go ahead and take a look. Let's say, for example, that we are going to take this significant low right here. And I'm going to go to the drawing menu, Fibonacci cycles, click on this bar where the significant low is, and see if there's any reactions to the market here. I don't see, well, I do see, you see right at the 21, which is a Fibonacci number, see how Apple gapped up significantly? There's a big gap. The prior day, it closed at 145, and the next day, it opened at 148. So we had a $3 jump from one closing price to the next, and that happened right at the line of 21, which is a Fibonacci number. I don't see anything else happening on the 55 or the 89, but a lot of times, the fact that many traders are looking at these Fibonacci levels as, places where the market could react means a lot. There's a lot of anticipation of where the price is headed around those times. So this is a way that you use the cycles. You cannot extend them. They're just vertical lines at exactly the Fibonacci numbers in the sequence. If I go here into the future, you can see those numbers that we talked about earlier. These are the ones that we used in the calculator, the 233, the 377. And if you continue to go out into the future, we can see 610 and 987, and we can just keep on going and look at all the different Fibonacci numbers. And that's it. Those are all the Fibonacci tools that we have built into the TradeStation platform. There are a total of 7. And each one of these Fibonacci tool, each one of them has their own technicalities in terms of how to draw them, how to format them. Some of them require just 1 click, some of them requires 2 clicks, and some of them requires 3 clicks, depending on how it's calculated. Hopefully, with what we did today, drawing each one of them, you have an understanding on how to apply them to the chart. Now, in terms of interpretation, There's many ways of interpreting them. There's a ton of information online. There are books specifically created on Fibonacci and how to interpret it. So I want to just encourage you to continue your line of study on the Fibonacci to see if it's something you want to introduce in your market analysis. I've used many of these tools just as examples, and sometimes it is really surprising how the market price movements align with some of these levels, and truly interesting. So it's just a matter of using them, get familiar with them. There is a lot of education on the TradeStation help files that tell you how those tools are built. But again, feel free to use them in your trading as you see fit. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It was great doing this technical class on the Fibonacci tools, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope to see you next class. Manolo has been sending the link to our events page, and we are continuously adding new topics and new comments to new ideas to the class. If there's anything that you'd like to see more of, please communicate with us. We have an email address, education@tradestation.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you for attending today, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next class. Goodbye, everyone. Great having you.